Hello, Heather Elwood here, and welcome to the Sacred Masculinity Podcast. Today I want to talk about a topic which is safety and what is safety. Now, this word is really a lot, and it's an important word because it's a word that describes the relationships that we're in. So we're going to explore what safety is on the Sacred Masculinity Podcast, because I think it's really important for men to understand this word safety and what it means, and to understand how they have a level of privilege at times, most of the time, that they're not even aware of. I'm not saying that men don't ever feel safe, because I think that sometimes men don't feel safe, but I also think that men don't understand just how different that is. There's a saying that I read, or that Margaret Atwood said, and she said, at core, men are afraid women will laugh at them, while at core, women are afraid men will kill them. And I think that's generally true. I mean, if we look at the power dynamic of men and women, men have typically had the power up until times. And by recent times, I mean even as recent as the 1970s, 1980s, right? Women didn't necessarily have the right to their own bank account or their own credit cards or things like that, like things that we take for granted now that we don't even think about. But yet, when you really consider that, getting married for a woman, empowering situation, because in a lot of ways that meant that she moved out of her family's home and then in with a man, and now her husband, and he's got a lot of power. So what is safety? If men are afraid of being laughed at, but women are afraid of being killed, there's a real difference there. Now, I will say in my life, I've had experiences where I've been afraid for my life. When I was walking on a trail, and this guy ran up to me from nowhere, and he was on meth, and he punched me in the face. Afraid that he was going to come after me and kill me. He didn't, but there was a moment there where I was like, this guy could kill me, and I don't know what I'll do. It's one of the reasons I started getting into martial arts, because I wanted to learn how to defend myself if something like that ever happened again. To feel a sense of safety and strength. I've been in car accidents. I've had other near-death experiences. So I know what it's like to not feel safe, but if you were to ask me, I would say that most of the time I take it for granted that I am safe. And as a white man, all right, so if we were to talk to somebody that was like a black man, for example, his sense of safety is going to differ from mine. He's not going to necessarily feel safe in the way that I feel safe, because of how people will treat him on the basis of the color of his skin and all the assumptions that are made. So, I mean, when I look at it as a white man, I also see how, even in terms of race, I have this unearned privilege of being, of amongst other things, being safe. I don't, when I go on the road, I'm typically not worried that a cop's going to pull me over. And if the cop does pull me over, I'm not too worried about what the cop is going to do. Anybody else that's not a white man is probably worrying about that quite a bit. Wondering, what is this person going to do to me? How's this going to affect me? So it's important to understand that there are different experiences of safety, and that any statement that's made can be a broad generalization. And that's one of the reasons why I want to explore this, because I think it's really important to understand, what is our sense of safety? And I think like when it comes to my experiences around women, what I feel safe when they know they can trust a man and they know that he's consistent and that he's honest and shows integrity and that he follows through on his actions. He's not just talking a good game, but that he actually follows through on what he says. And once you lose a woman's trust, sense of safety. Think back, I had an experience, and this is one that I share. I was with somebody, and that person had just moved in with me, and we'd had sex maybe a couple times. And one night, person and I were talking, and they shared that they'd had an experience and where it was causing them to never would ever want to have penetrative sex again. And I did the best I could to be understanding and empathetic. And yet honestly, I failed. It's not one of my prouder moments because after that person went to bed, I was feeling hurt and rejected. Here I was really into this person, and I thought that we were gonna have I had these expectations, this covert contract. It was nice guy behavior. Totally own it. And what did I do? I ended up I punched or I a sink, and then I punched a pillar outside of my house. Did I lay a hand on that person physically? No. But did I do something along the lines of physical violence? Yes. Do you think that person felt safe with me? No, not at all. That whatever sense of safety that person had with me vanished at that point, and I never got it back because that was a huge violation of trust at that point. I mean, that person was like, "Hey, here's this person. He says he's going to be here for me." And then when I tell him something, share something, an experience that I'm having right now where I'm feeling this way, what does he do? He's thinking about himself. He's not thinking about me. He's not showing up for me. And I mean, I apologized. I acknowledged. I recognized that I was going through something. I was having my own experience, and I was having an experience of rejection. I was having an experience, but instead of being able to share that with her honest and clean way, and in a way where it wasn't taking space from her experience, I ended up taking space from her, making her feel unsafe. I wasn't feeling safe, admittedly, but the point is like, as a man, like I didn't even see how what I did harmed that relationship until afterwards because I was so reactive and this is why we have to explore this concept of safety. And again, not one of my finer moments. I'm not proud to share it on here, but I'm sharing it to make a point. It can be so easy for men to take for granted that sense of safety, and then once it's gone, and you can't get it back. You can watch as the relationship just goes bye bye because of that. And it didn't matter. I mean, we were together for almost a year after that, and still I mean, for a good portion of that time, I revisited that moment. I'm like, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I could take it back. I couldn't take it back. And while I could address it and speak to it, there was the fact of the matter is it was always something that was going to lay between us, and there was really no way for it to go away. And of course, it couldn't go away. It had happened. Maybe there could have been some forgiveness. Maybe there could have been some work around it, but at the time, like I didn't handle it very well. And this is the thing that men have to keep in mind, like our sense of safety, we don't think about it that way. Now, I had another experience where I was with a person where they broke something of mine, and I came home and they told me to strip, which I really shouldn't have done, but it made was off and I was unsafe and I felt unsafe in that moment. That person was trying to strip me down, and that's what she did. And that made me feel unsafe. I felt very vulnerable then. She was stark naked at the time, and I think if anything, it kind of gave her a sense of power. Here was this man doing what she said, and it was a moment that it wasn't like a consensual moment. It was a moment that was anything but it illustrated to me like, oh, here's the situation where I don't. So I'm not saying that men can't ever not feel safe, because the fact of the matter is men can be in situations where they aren't safe with their partner. I mean, you know, where they make assumptions about their safety when they shouldn't, really. Whereas in general, women aren't making assumptions. Women are carefully looking and examining and trying to see, am I safe with this person? Is this person for real? Can I trust this person? Will this person be consistent? And I think really there's kind of a balancing there. Ideally doing that too, but a lot of times they don't. So it's important that, like, when we look at what is safety, that safety differs from person to person and experience to experience, and like what your sense of safety will be the same as mine. And there is unearned privilege in some cases, and in other cases there's anything but. Some people never feel safe. I think that's like a really accurate statement to make, and there's no way for them to feel safe. Now, as men, we have to look at what we can do to help create a safer environment. Because again, that saying that goes back, that saying that I read at the beginning, you know, women are afraid of being killed, men are afraid of being laughed at, like, says a lot. In general, men aren't maybe they should be more afraid. I mean, having had a couple of experiences now with different people, I can safely say that there is a realization on my part about how, like, I'm really not necessarily that safe if I'm with somebody else. I mean, under the right circumstances, that person could kill me or hurt me. I don't want to be paranoid, but it's true. But I think then too, like, this is kind of like on all of us, where we have to look at, like, well, what is my sense of safety? And for men, what they really need to do is they need to be working on creating a sense of safety in their environment. If I'm not helping to create a sense of safety, then chances are that's going to go away really quick. An example that I shared where, you know, like, I pounded the sink block and yelled, that would have been safer. I could have still had my experience, and I could have yelled somewhere like where nobody could hear it or where it wouldn't matter. And that would have been fine for me to vent and release and, hey, you know, when you shared X, I wanted to be there and be supportive of you, but I also felt like some part of me felt threatened and rejected and all that other stuff. I felt unsafe because I really thought that we had something special, and it feels like this is getting to, and et cetera, et cetera. I could have said that. I could have handled it any number of ways, but I handled it in absolutely the worst, like that. And this is where we need to think about these things, like, how am I showing up? Because it goes even beyond that. There's another word, consent. And this is a really important word. We're going to explore it more in a later video, but consent is also designed to ideally create safety. If I consent to something, if I say yes and it's an enthusiastic yes, then there is safety there. But if I say no, then that no is basically saying, like, that's a boundary and you need to respect it. And we have to work on an awareness around consent. And again, I'm not saying men don't ever experience having a situation that goes against them. We'll talk about that in another video because it does happen. But I think men in general to be aware, like, oh, am I creating safety? Am I showing that? And how do we do that? Well, we communicate with clarity. If you're a nice guy, you're not communicating about what your wants and needs are. And as a result, you're going to have experiences where things come out sideways. And that was the example that I shared right there. As a guy, I was, and I had this sense of, well, this person and I, we've agreed that we're having sex now. And I treated it as kind of an immutable fact at the time. Again, not proud of it, not proud of that. I acknowledge it. When what I should have done is treated it as this is something that can change in any given moment, because that's really the truth of it. If I had approached it in that way, I would have been more empathetic and aware, and I wasn't. So when we talk about safety, this is part of what's so important about safety, that safety is not just some kind of like one and done type of deal. Like, oh, this person feels safe. Maybe that person feels safe in the moment. Doesn't mean that the person's going to feel safe the next day or the day after. And it may not, and more often than not, it may not even be. You could be doing everything. You could be doing everything right, and that person could still feel not safe. And it has nothing to do with you. It could just be something going on. One of the things that men need to remember about women is that, they are geared toward. We are. We're men have kind of a physiology around going out and hunting. Like, we're going out into the environment. We're actively looking for danger. We're doing what we have to do to get the food. Women, on the other hand, are staying close. They're keeping an eye on things. And for anyone watching this, they may say, well, you're making generalizations. Okay, maybe I am. You got to remember, too, that women and men are equivalent. They are equivalent. There are differences, and it's okay to acknowledge and admit those differences. In fact, I think it's realistic. Part of being real about we do acknowledge the differences, and then we acknowledge that in general, men are physical and can be more aggressive. That's in part based off of just all that genetic and biological, programming that we have. Some of it's also cultural. A lot of it's cultural. And it doesn't that doesn't give us a free pass. If anything, we need to look at the cultural baggage around this. We need to look and be aware of the physiology and the biology and how that all this. We need to understand and recognize how important it is to cultivate a sense of safety and recognize that safety is not guaranteed. Am I a safe person? Well, some people watching this video would probably conclude at this point, having heard some of the stuff that I've said, that I'm not, and I couldn't blame them if they did. That's why we do this work, though. And that's why I speak this stuff aloud, and I'm not pretending that I've never had experiences where I've done things that I'm not proud of. Because I think part of how you cultivate safety, I can't feel safe with somebody sense of transparency. I can't feel safe with somebody if I don't get a sense that person is being real with me. That doesn't mean that we're not going to talk about uncomfortable topics or subjects or things like that. And there are going to be moments where we genuinely don't feel safe. This is kind of a reality of life. Like, you're never going to be guaranteed safety. If anything, you have to actively collaborate to create a sense of safety. And that means everyone has to work toward that. You might say, okay, well, all right, Taylor, but you're saying that the burden's on men. And I'm going to say, yeah, At least initially it is, because again, we make assumptions. We, you know, and especially like especially in my case, like as a white man, I definitely make assumptions. I know there are experiences that I am not privy to because of my unearned privilege. And it is easy to make assumptions about how safe the world is when I'm living in a bubble that creates that sense and I don't fully like, and here's the thing of it, like I can say all that and be like, yeah, I acknowledge that other people don't, and I still don't entirely get it. Even having awareness around it does not guarantee that I'm going to get it. And this is why it's important for this in regards to women, is that a woman's experience of safety versus a man. A person I was dating once, and she even admitted that like one of the reasons she was with me was because she felt like that by being with me, she was safer from other men because of the fact that it was kind of like, well, I'm in this relationship with somebody. When I heard that at the time, to be because of that, when I look back at it now, I think how sad, and yet how real. Her with me because of the fact that she throws off this energy of being with somebody instead of being single. That's what makes her feel safe. Think about that. Think about that the next time that you look over at your partner, or you're going somewhere with your partner, or if your partner goes out alone and she's going out somewhere. Think about the fact that in part her sense of safety is derived perhaps from being with you. And what does that really, and do you feel safe in the same way? I mean, I'll admit, like in my case, I didn't think that I was safer because I was with her. Like, okay, we're together. That's great. I didn't a thought that first crossed my mind as a reason to date her. I wanted to, I thought she was a funny, interesting person. It wasn't, oh, I want to be with you because you make me feel safer. At least not in the physical sense, but in the emotional sense, actually. I'm going to revise that. In the emotional sense, I thought she was safer. I remember telling her one point at the beginning of our relationship, it was like, oh, you seem like you're a really kind and nice person. And I wanted that. I wanted someone who was kind. That mattered to me. So that sense of safety was there, but it was on an emotional level. And I think that's the other thing that we have to recognize. Like for men, safety comes emotional safety. Can I be safe enough with this person that I can let my walls down, that I can let them see me? And in all honesty, a lot of times men don't feel that way in relationship. I mean, one of the things that I've learned too is that women don't necessarily want to see men be that vulnerability, but a lot of times they really don't. They want to know that he has his act together, that he can do, that he's gonna be able to take care of things, that he's somebody that they can let go of and surrender around, that they can release. The last thing they want to do is be in a position where they're having to quote unquote mother you. Oh, you're feeling sad and upset? Well, I guess I got to step in the mother role. I don't want that. I mean, they may want to know kind of like, but only to a certain extent. And I think it's really important to recognize that too. And this is why men need other men. Like if we're looking for emotional safety, that's where having solid male friends, having people that you can talk to and connect with, having people that you can share with, and people you can relate to. That's kind of what we're dealing with here in relationship to being male. And you're not, a lot of times men make the mistake where they put all that on the romantic relationship. And part of that's because they've been conditioned to do that with their mom. But the last thing you want to do is treat your woman as your mom. That's not what you really want. He wants. I had a person who I was with one time, and she said about her ex-husband that it felt like he was the third child. She had two kids, and it felt like she was raising a third child with him. The two of them barely ever had sex. It was one of the reasons that relationship didn't work, because she felt like she had to take care of him as a mom. She wasn't attracted to him. She wanted a man that she didn't have to take care of in that way. A man who could step up and, if anything, could take care of her. A crucial distinction to make. So, like, if we look at what is safety, that's something we really have to consider. What is safety? Physical safety. What is emotional safety? What is mental safety? What is spiritual safety? These are all things to really think about in relationship to ourselves and to other people. And this is stuff we aren't going to figure out without really taking a hard look at ourselves. And like I said, I shared the stories that I shared. I'm not proud of the fact that I have made someone feel unsafe. It doesn't matter that I didn't like them physically. It's the fact that I created it. I helped to create an environment where they didn't feel safe. Like, that's not a good thing. When we do something to create an environment where there isn't a sense of safety, that's our work. That's where, like, I've had to do my work as a man is to really look at that, and to look at my relationship with anger, or look at my relationship with myself, look at my covert agreements, look at my nice guy behaviors, look at all the things that I need to change, and then make those changes and do that work. And that's kind of the reality that we men have to deal with. We have to come to terms with what we need to do. And that means being real and authentic about the areas where we struggled, even if it's not easy. Now, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to go and do what I'm doing and create a video about it, but you should be able to speak to, like, you could talk to a therapist, you could talk to a men's coach like me. Really, at the end of the day, you got to really look at like where your issues are coming from too. Like, if I look at me, like, what happened, and in the one situation shared is, I wasn't fully emotional. I wasn't fully present with her. I got caught up in my head and my heart. I suddenly didn't feel safe myself. I'm not saying that as an excuse, and come to terms and recognize, like, oh, this is something that comes up, and how do I deal with this the next time? Because this could happen again. And I don't want to lose my temper like that. That's not the way I want to show up as a man or as a person. Do you see what I'm saying? You got to look at those things and really take them apart. So that's kind of my some of these topics in more depth, but I wanted to share that today. Thanks for watching.